Glanbia Performance Nutrition is in the free fall section of their bungee jump, but will the strategic transformation cord catch them before it's too late? Glanbia just released their year-end 2020 financial reports, presentation, had their earnings call. I dug into all of that, pulled out a ton of great information, and hopefully give you guys some extra commentary to kind of draw some of this information and bring it into a more useful space for anybody listening to this. But I want to go through some of the financial data first. I will have some additional commentary and some different things that are forward looking at the end of this video. But the full year 2020 Glanbia net sales were $4.64 billion. And I did do some of the conversions from euros over to dollars just to kind of make it more applicable to the majority of the people that are going to be watching this, which live in the United States. And that revenue was up 1.8% on a like-for-like basis. So that's pulling out anything from a currency kind of fluctuations, mergers and acquisitions that were added in the last year, so they didn't have comparatives there, and a 53rd week that happened in fiscal 2019. Now, for those that might not be familiar at this point about Glanbia, what makes up Glanbia, there are two primary wholly owned divisions. Let's cover the first one, Glanbia Nutritionals, pretty quickly, and that's because particularly I don't spend too much time personally on this division, though I fully understand and appreciate how extremely important it is to the overall business. Glanbia Nutritionals, which does have kind of two subdivisions, the US cheese business and then also the Nutritional Solutions business. The fiscal 2020 revenue total was $3.26 billion. That was up 10% year over year on a like-for-like basis from strong pricing and volume increases. They have a growth strategy that is focused on protecting the house, which is really around their protein solutions business, making sure that they sustain their dominance in the protein market, and then expanding core platforms through international innovation and mergers and acquisition activity if they can find something that works out well, and then also focusing on sustainability, partnerships, and extending their global reach. Now, moving into Glanbia Performance Nutrition, which is where I focus a lot more of my attention, the 2020 full year revenue was $1.38 billion, and that declined 10.8% on a like-for-like basis. And that's coming from neutral pricing, but steep volume declines. Now, if we look at revenue by channel throughout the year, food, drug, mass convenience made up 37% of the business. That's actually up from 10% in 2015. Online was 33% of the business. That was up from 22% in 2015. Distribution was 16%. That is down from 32% in 2015. And then specialty, which now only makes up 14%, but in 2015, it was actually the biggest channel at 36% of the business. And I wanted to make sure I noted that this drastic channel shift isn't easy for any business, but it's increasingly difficult for one that does over $1 billion in sales. While I've been critical of Glanbia for their lack of aggressiveness in the last 2 to 3 years, I'm also very aware of these longer comparative changes. Now, looking at Glanbia Performance Nutrition from just kind of their portfolio makeup, they do kind of separate these out now. That was something that they started doing about a year ago. Lifestyle brands, which makes up now 31% of the portfolio, is the brands Amazing Grass, Think, and then Slim Fast. The 2020 revenue was $434 million. That did decline 5.3% year over year on a like-for-like basis. Now, the sports nutrition portfolio, which makes up 38% of the portfolio, that is Optimum Nutrition, BSN, and Isopure. The 2020 revenue of that subcategory of the Glanbia Performance Nutrition portfolio was around $528 million. That did decline 9% year over year on a like-for-like basis. Now, international distribution and then international direct-to-consumer, I kind of lump those together, but Glanbia breaks them out. Total of those two divisions, it makes up 31% of the portfolio. And that is NutriAmino, also their website and private label Body and Fit, and then all the North American brands that are sold internationally. The 2020 revenue for that segment of Glanbia Performance Nutrition was $328 million. International distribution, like I said, is mostly coming from Optimum Nutrition, and that declined 21.3% year over year on a like-for-like basis. Direct-to-consumer grew 1.9% year over year on a like-for-like basis. So that is where they're going to continue to put a lot of their effort, a lot of their resources. They're going to try to enter new markets, and all international markets really are following what had happened in the US for digital adoption, and then also prior to that, the Asian markets as well. So this is something that Glanbia as a whole globally is focusing on, not necessarily just from an international perspective. Now, looking at 2020 revenues by geography, the US still makes up the bulk of the Glanbia Performance Nutrition revenue. That's 71% of it. If we lump in Canada and Mexico, it's 72%. Europe makes up 19%, and then Asian Pacific and Latin America, and then kind of all the other ones make up 9% of the business. While I named a lot of brands in Glanbia Performance Nutrition, it really has become a two-brand portfolio. That was part of the Glanbia Performance Nutrition transformation project that was announced a year ago that also included items such as rationalization of SKUs from the portfolio, significant realignment of routes to market in regions outside of North America, targeted price increases, and now 71% of revenue of Glanbia Performance Nutrition is made up of Optimum Nutrition and SlimFast. Both of these brands did see consumption growth in measured channels, and then also both of these brands are growing brand equity, trust, and affinity. But though these two major brands within Glanbia Performance Nutrition are kind of following a similar path, I actually think in the next 5 years they have pretty different trajectories. Now, SlimFast, I do think the recent success of SlimFast was because it was mismanaged prior to the acquisition by Glanbia. I also think that Glanbia put a lot of work into new product offerings, innovation, kind of repositioning the brand, creating a bunch of efficiencies and synergies into the actual operating and business model. But I don't think that is something that is going to sustain long term. Do I think that it's going to fall off the cliff, like revenue is going to fall off the cliff? No, but I definitely think it's not going to sustain the extra level of growth that has seen in the last year to 18 months. Glanbia, I think, also kind of knows that, even though leadership was really pretty positive on the call and talking about the future and how great they think the SlimFast name is going to be. But if you look at the elevated spend on the marketing side, I think they know that they're going to have to kind of keep that going and keep that up to make sure that they are kind of extending that life cycle out as much as possible. So they're actually going to be spending about 11% of next year's sales from SlimFast. Comparative to Optimum Nutrition, they only spend about 8% of their sales on that brand. Now, all of that being said, I think there wouldn't be the positive trajectory of Optimum Nutrition if Glanbia did not acquire SlimFast. Because I think Glanbia as a whole needed some of those skill set, best practices, talent that SlimFast had for the food, drug, mass convenience category. And that has really kind of helped Optimum Nutrition get some traction in those markets. I think Optimum Nutrition as a whole, just the name, brand name, I don't think it has really much ceiling. I also think it has a really strong history and legacy to the brand. I also think the product mix and just how well it has been received over so many years, and just people have the highest regards of it. Quality-wise, it's always been something that's been extremely trusted in the market. All of those things are going to play out really well when you shift and put the right products, put the right marketing strategy, put the right brand strategy, storytelling out to a mainstream consumer that can also get those products in all of the retail points of distribution that they would probably shop for these products in. I think that all helps Optimum Nutrition see a very, very bright future in the next 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if they can dial in some of those things a few degrees, like I was talking about, some of those strategies around product, brand, marketing, that the brand could potentially double in the US market. Kind of sounds a little bit crazy, but I definitely think if you start to get the momentum, you start getting the right product, especially you get a RTD protein product that actually is well received in the market. They're going to need to work on that a little bit. I think you can get a ton of traction pretty quick because of just the legacy and the history and how well it's going to be received by a bunch of new mainstream consumers. Now, why SlimFast and Optimum Nutrition are something that Glanbia Performance Nutrition is spending a ton of time on and resources on is because they don't necessarily cannibalize each other. They don't really have the same positioning. They don't have much crossover of consumers, at least today. Now, looking at this 3 to 5 years in the future, that might be totally different as the market continues to kind of consolidate the sports nutrition, active nutrition, wellness categories all together, and all the consumers kind of have different views about what that all means. Some of those products might cannibalize each other and they might be in that situation where they need to look at their portfolio again. But in today, 2021, those products don't necessarily create too many issues. Now, Glanbia's balance sheet over 2020 has strengthened. They were able to do a bunch of things to their debt restructuring. They were able to put themselves in a position, and that really just draws up the question of where are they going to put that capital? I think they're going to put that towards some CapEx. They're probably going to spend that towards giving it back to some of the investor community like they've done with share buybacks and keeping the dividend right. But M&A is going to be something that they're going to focus on. I think they're going to get really aggressive probably on the Glanbia Nutritional side first. I think there's going to be more deals out there for them, and I think they're going to be looking at complementary, bolt-on, or extending their kind of core competency platform. But I also think they're going to be actively looking at brands, consumer brands for the Glanbia Performance Nutrition portfolio. And the leadership did kind of talk about some attributes that maybe they'd be looking for on the M&A side. They really aligned with what I talked about in a bunch of different previous videos for Glanbia. So diversification away from protein. They're very dairy-based protein kind of focused right now, the Glanbia portfolio is. So they're looking at trying to find some plant-based proteins that could work out really well. Also having more digital capabilities, both from brands that work very well digitally, sell very well on e-commerce platforms, but also hopefully the team can stick around. So it's not just like an asset sale. They can buy or acqui-hire a bunch of really great talent that they can bring into the Glanbia Performance Nutrition team globally. That could really be a ton of opportunities for them to scale that part of their business out. Also on the food, drug, mass convenience, they're looking for brands that do have proven sales capabilities there. They have a track record of doing really well in those channels. And then if you're looking at this from like format diversification, Glanbia has really been ready to mix heavy, and they need to continue to diversify away from that, mostly on the ready to drink side, but ready to eat as well. So I think if anybody they are looking at, they are going to have, again, proven track record in some of those formats that are more food and beverage. The problem right now on the brand side is that deal flow, just deals as a whole, valuations of companies are a little bit bloated. And I laugh and say a little bit because I think it's a lot. And a lot of that has to do with just the amount of people looking to make deals right now. This is kind of a really great environment. There's also a ton of people looking for different deals, be that on the private equity side, be that on the venture fund side. You also have now SPACs, the special purpose acquisition companies. If you guys haven't really been paying attention to that trend, I'll pop up a video for you guys to watch there that I kind of covered a bunch of different things that are happening in the CPG industry now. And then just thinking about also large CPG strategics like a Glanbia, but obviously a ton of other companies similar to them, maybe even on the food and beverage side, that had a really great year. They had improved operating leverage. They have a debt market that they can go out and raise money at almost zero right now. So they're looking for deals as well. So all of this really is just driving up a ton of valuations right now. So where could they be potentially looking for deals? I've talked about this name a ton of different times. I've talked about it in Glanbia videos before with Vega. Danone continues to look for a buyer or look at what they're going to do with that brand. I think that works extremely well. But if that deal doesn't go through, who could they really look at? And this is kind of just spitballing some names out there. I think it just kind of maybe fits some of those key attributes that they were talking about. The first one could be Vitamin Well, which is an owner of both ready to eat and ready to drink brands. So Nocco on the energy side, I think that would be a really good fit. And then on the ready to eat side, the Bear Bells platform. I think they have some other kind of things in their portfolio as well, but it could be interesting. It might be a little bit too small for Glanbia to really put the time and effort they need into that brand, but I think maybe you give it to the end of this year and it's probably a pretty good opportunity for them. You can also look at a brand like Bulletproof might be a name. A name that I've thrown around some other videos is OWN, the Only What You Need kind of plant-based platform. And then a UK-based meal replacement, kind of ready to eat, ready to drink, ready to mix kind of company that could be really interesting for them would be Schall, which has had another really high growth year. I think they're at the size now that Glanbia could potentially put a ton of really great resources to them. They can also bring them over to the North American market in a much stronger way. So that could be an interesting name to look at. I think they'd have to probably pay up for that brand because they have a ton of growth behind them, but could be something in their backyard that they could find and acquire that's not necessarily a US based brand. But I'd be interested to hear where you guys think Glanbia should make some M&A moves. You guys have any names that you think work out really well? If you want to drop those down in the comments of the YouTube video, or you guys want to reach out to me on any of my social media networks, I'd love to hear those. But on a final thought, in a year that had a global health pandemic, you had social unrest, you had a depressed economy that created a ton of like massive layoffs and polarizing political landscape, it's easy for brands or businesses as a whole to really just go into survival mode, but I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to think about. And Glanbia kind of brought up something that I was excited to hear about. They brought a lot of attention to it in the presentation, and this is with their ESG strategy that they laid out. Now, ESG is often confused with just sustainability, and while these are complementary concepts, the two are not completely interchangeable. ESG refers to how the same company manages itself in three dimensions: environmental, social, and governance. Sustainability initiatives may be part of a company's ESG efforts, but they more often than not don't comprise all of them. I like to think of ESG as how a company manages and maximizes its own non-financial risk. As part of the Pure Food plus Pure Planet strategy, Glanbia is setting an ambitious commitment to decarbonize its operations and value chain. This is from a reduction in manufacturing emissions by 30% and supply chain emissions by 25% by 2030. They also aim to be net zero carbon emissions no later than 2050, committed to zero waste to landfills from all operational sites by 2025, and a 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. On social areas, Glanbia has supported a number of initiatives this year, and they'll continue to look and source those that align with them. And these include various donations to first responders, healthcare workers, food banks, and charities globally. They've also hosted live virtual workouts for consumers, with donations going to help personal trainers during lockdowns. Glanbia has also made significant progress in its diversity and inclusion strategy. Glanbia is committed to fostering a truly inclusive culture, nurturing a diverse workplace reflective of customers and consumers Glanbia proudly serves. On the governance side, the board has made further progress of its evolution during 2020 with appointment of the group's first independent chairman, as well as an increase in female representation on the board, with a total number of female directors now at 3.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.